Weiner family were active members of their local church, where loving your neighbor and helping others were more than just words, but a way of life. But not everyone in the Weiners' church wished them well. And forensic evidence proved that someone in the congregation had the motive to kill them. Telephone call at the bank.
We know it's a tape-recorded call because there's no interaction between Harry and Sally. He's trying to talk to her, and she's not responding. She just continues to talk.
She had to read that if her husband didn't come up with the money, why they'd cut off her hands.
She told him in detail, you know, that she was being held and these people were dangerous and they were going to kill her if he didn't provide the money.
Sally told him there was a bag under his car with instructions that he was to follow exactly, or she would be killed. The ransom note told Harry to fill the gym bag with all of the money from his bank's vault and drive to a deserted bridge 10 miles outside of town to await further instructions. Harry immediately contacted the local police and FBI. They told him to drive to the back of the police station and pick up a law enforcement officer.
He got into the car and laid down in the back seat with a 12-gauge shotgun.
When Harry arrived at the railroad bridge, no one was there, so he waited, with the sharpshooter in the back seat and with FBI agents hiding in the woods nearby.
You just sit there very quietly, you don't move, and you listen. And you listen for any kind of footstep, any kind of twig breaking, any kind of noise, hoping that he might contact us, but thinking that he's probably within 100 yards of us watching with a rifle.
After waiting for several hours, the FBI agents told Harry to go home and await further word there.
I felt very sorry for him. He was a very good person, and he was frustrated, and he was being patient, and he was reasonable.
The next day at sunrise, the FBI performed a grid search of the drop site. And near the railroad underpass, they found a second ransom note attached to a metal rod with a crepe paper flag.
The rods we recognized as being rods that were used in filing cabinets, older filing cabinets that slid through the drawers of the filing cabinets from the front to the rear.
But the sign wasn't easy to see, which is why Harry missed it the night before. The second ransom note told Harry to proceed to another location several miles from there, where the FBI found a third note telling Harry to proceed to an abandoned church 3 miles away. That's where the trail stopped.
He could observe Harry traveling through the countryside there, and he could also watch for surveillance units and police who might be following him.
18 hours had passed from the time Sally was kidnapped. With no further word from the kidnappers, investigators feared the worst. "36-year-old Sally Weiner, the wife of a bank vice president, had been kidnapped and held for ransom. Investigators learned that neither Sally nor her husband Harry had any known enemies.
You can count on just a couple fingers the number of cases that you see where a bank employee's family member is abducted in exchange for financial gain. It just is not a common crime.
Police found Sally's car near a church not far from her husband's bank.
Her car is left in that parking lot. The windows are up and the doors are locked. So there's no sign of a struggle in any respect.
All days.
The bullet went in, it fragmented extensively, and it produced a lot of damage to various parts of the brain.
Next, the FBI analyzed the ransom notes. All were typed with a computer word processing program, and all were printed with the same font. On one note, the word exactly was misspelled. Investigators got their first real break in the case from a police officer who was walking in the shopping center near Harry Weiner's bank.
They worshiped together, sang hymns together. They both sat in pews not far from each other at the church.
Because of the similarity between the ransom note and the sign in his store window, investigators confiscated both his home and office computers.
The preliminary search that was conducted by the state police and one of our other agents revealed exactly to me what it revealed to them. Initially, nothing.
Next, investigators wanted to know the approximate time of Sally's death so they could question Copenheffer about his whereabouts. A forensic entomologist analyzed the insect activity on Sally's body and discovered second-stage larvae from the species Califera, a type of blowfly. He had been turned down for a $25,000 business loan by Harry Weiner less than a year earlier. Copenheffer was now the prime suspect in the kidnapping and murder of Harry Weiner's wife, Sally. So the FBI put David Copenheffer under surveillance and watched as he took some trash out to the dumpster behind his store. When the FBI seized it, they found some suspicious items. They found a used roll of crepe paper, the same make and color as the paper found with the ransom notes.
The FBI was able to match up the tear from that roll of crepe paper, which was in the trash at the bookstore, to one of the actual flags.
They also found bits and pieces of paper. The FBI painstakingly pieced them together.
And that note actually was a duplicate of one of the notes that was left at one of the sites that Mr. Weiner was directed to go to after the kidnapping of his wife.
Armed with a search warrant, the FBI found a stack of metal file cabinet rods in Copenheffer's shed, similar to the ones found with the ransom notes. The FBI's forensic metallurgist William Tobin analyzed the rods with a scanning electron microscope and discovered some unique marks on the side of the rods created as they were manufactured.
Individual characteristics that are imparted from the tool or die on the workpiece are not the same in hour 1 of that die's life as they would be in hour 8, 12, or hour 16.
These marks indicated to Mr. Tobin that the rods found in Copenheffer's home and those found with the ransom notes were all made on the same day at virtually the same time.
Something on the order of minutes. This was one of the best associations I've ever had with regard to the fabrication characteristics.
Police also found Glacier brand ammunition in Copenheffer's home, the same type used in Sally Weiner's murder.
I think that would be extremely unusual to have glacier round ammunition in a person's home.
And local authorities asked the FBI to conduct their own analysis of Copenheffer's computers after the initial search of the hard drives turned up nothing. A document is not all in one place on a disk drive. Pieces of it are stored in different sectors of a drive. When a document is deleted, it's not erased from the hard drive. Instead, the space occupied by that document is labeled available to reuse if necessary.
By going through that disk mathematically, finding the proper clusters based upon the known interleaving of the drive, you can piece together an entire document if the file space that that document occupied had not been overwritten.
When this crime was committed in 1988, there were no computer programs that could reassemble documents that had been deleted. So Al Johnson and his team had to do something that had never been done before. They had to do the analysis manually.
It was a painstaking process that took approximately 33 days to look at two 20-megabyte hard drives.
A computer is about as secure as a wet paper bag. It never throws data away.
And they found bits and pieces of a document Copenheffer had deleted called The Plan. It listed all of the steps necessary to carry out Sally Weiner's kidnapping and murder.
We were able to recover 80% of the murder plan back off of the hard drives. 20% of that had been overwritten or altered to a point where we couldn't recover the data.
This evidence was the most damning. This evidence connected
from the police scanner.
And I went immediately to the plaza and parked my car, and there was not a lot of activity.
So he walked into David Copenheffer's store and asked what was going on.
And he looked at me and said, no. He said, there hasn't been a single thing going on. It's been a very quiet night. There isn't anything going on. At the time I was talking to him, I didn't know that he had killed her. So I did not make a connection that here was a cold-blooded murder sitting in front of me.
After learning that the police were involved, Copenheffer most likely stayed in his store instead of going to the ransom drop site. And Harry didn't see the next ransom note Copenheffer left for him at the railroad bridge. Based on the forensic evidence, David Copenheffer was arrested and charged with kidnapping and first-degree murder.
One of the things that we did is get a writing sample from Copenheffer and had him spell exactly. And he misspelled it in the writing sample. It's the same way that it was misspelled in his computer. And again, that's to correlate the fact that he's the one who inputted that stuff into the computer versus some external source.
David Copenheffer was tried and eventually convicted of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison.
David Copenheffer is the master manipulator. It's an intellectual game, an intellectual challenge to see how far he can push the system and what he can get away with.
I think if he were out, he would kill again. And he put a contract on me and Harry Weiner while the trial was going on because we were key witnesses against him. I don't think that he would stop at anything.
Despite the overwhelming amount of forensic evidence against him, Copenheffer continues to maintain his innocence.
That's the arrogance of the man, that despite overwhelming evidence as to his guilt, and many defendants do this, they still refuse to accept responsibility for the crimes that they've committed. And that's the sin, one of the sins of all of this.
This case, in my own opinion, is a landmark case. It is the beginning or the genesis of what computer forensics is now. From this, computer forensics was born.